Hello and welcome to The Excerpt. I'm Dana Taylor. It's the stuff of nightmares. Shortly after takeoff in early January, a panel on an Alaskan Airlines plane blew off midair. Luckily, the two seats next to that panel were empty. Not so luckily for Boeing. They're now under the microscope by regulators. Workers are coming forward, anonymously and otherwise, saying that the firm had recently been chipping away at longstanding safety practices to speed up the production process of its 737 MAX. The blowback from investors, regulators, and the public has been swift and isn't even close to being over. In its pursuit of an edge over Airbus, did Boeing put profits over lives? Here to discuss some of the issues facing Boeing is USA Today consumer traveler reporter and author of the Cruising Altitude column, Zach Wichter. Zach, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for having me on. These are important questions, and I'm excited for the conversation today.
The fallout at Boeing is still coming. Boeing isn't even close to being finished. Most recently, the firm's CEO, Dave Calhoun, has announced he'll be stepping down at the end of the year. Is he the only high-level executive who's out? And will this satisfy the public's need for accountability? What are you hearing on that front?
So he is not the only executive who's out at Boeing. There's been a lot of change in the C-suite there. In the past couple weeks, there were a few major announcements about people who are leaving the company, changing jobs, that kind of thing. It remains to be seen, though, if these changes are actually going to satisfy the public need for accountability, right? So Boeing has this long reputation as a great American company, and that reputation has really been tarnished in the past 5 to 10 years with some extremely high-profile incidents. And so the public's desire for accountability at Boeing comes down in part to restoring the company's reputation. You know, whoever comes in is going to have a lot of work to do to gain that public trust back. But they're also going to have to implement some culture changes within the company to put that emphasis back on safety and restore it to the reputation and the product quality that it was once really known for.
As has been reported in USA Today, the FAA investigation following the January incident revealed dozens of lapses in the quality control process. What's the latest on allegations that Boeing, which has had a long reputation for championing a culture of safety, they've lost their grip on quality control at some of their factories?
I think that's a fair way of putting it. I think that we've seen over and over, and I've reported on over and over, that the Boeing planes definitely have quality control issues. And that's why these regulators are stepping up their oversight of Boeing. You know, there are ongoing investigations by the National Transportation Safety Board. The Federal Aviation Administration has stepped up its own audits and reviews of Boeing's production practices, placed limits on some of what it can do, which is causing delays in airplane delivery, as they really try to get a handle on what the root cause of these quality issues are. So this has been a long-standing thing, both with its 737 production line, which is obviously kind of front and center in a lot of the controversy that we're seeing right now. The highest profile incidents have involved the 737 MAX family of jets. But Boeing's other big airplane product right now, the 787, its main wide-body competitor to Airbus's A350 and A330 family of planes, that's also had its own production quality issues. Things like foreign object debris, so tools or other things that may have been involved in the production process getting left in the fuselage, being discovered later during maintenance. These are all problems that Boeing has been grappling with and that regulators are taking a close look at.
Zach, you spoke with Robert Clifford, a senior partner at Clifford Law in Chicago, who represents the families of victims of two deadly Boeing 737 MAX 8 crashes, one in 2018 and the other in 2019. What do the families want to see here?
The families of the victims of those crashes really want to see accountability at Boeing. You know, they have been calling for the kind of upper-level management changes that we saw a few weeks ago for years. And they're basically saying that the deaths in those two 737 MAX crashes were preventable and could have been prevented if Boeing was a little bit more deliberate about its design of these airplanes and it's, paid more attention to safety over trying to get the airplanes off the production line as quickly as possible. So what the lawyer who I spoke to said essentially is that these changes are a long time coming, and we should be happy to see that Boeing seems to be taking these allegations and taking its tarnished reputation seriously now. He thinks it's overdue, but that these are steps in the right direction.
You wrote that he's also seen copies of the letter sent by the FBI to passengers on that Alaska Airlines flight, alerting them that they may be victims of a crime. What did he share with you?
The letters from the FBI, they are very careful about what they disclose from ongoing investigations. So what he told me was the letter was a little bit light on details, but it did notify the passengers who were on that Alaska Airlines flight that lost a door plug in January that they, as you said, may be victims of a crime and that the Federal Bureau of Investigations is looking into that incident. And he basically said that that seems like the right path forward, that Boeing should be held criminally implicated for its production quality issues. Again, that's his position, and it remains to be seen what the investigation turns up. But it does seem clear that there is this ongoing investigation that we've known about, and the scope of it may be expanding.
Zach, should we expect to see a renewed focus on engineering at Boeing, and have they disclosed any plans for implementing changes on the factory floor?
That does seem to be the hope. So a lot of the criticism of Boeing, even before this most recent incident, is that for a long time, they have been putting profits and returns to Wall Street's investors over the safety and quality and engineering that they really built their reputation on. So what many industry observers are saying is that the hope is that with these changes in leadership, they can go back to those roots of being an engineering quality first company. I haven't heard of any specific plans that they've disclosed yet in terms of what specific changes they're going to make. I think a big part of that will have to do with once the leadership changes actually happen. For now, they've only been announced. They haven't all fully gone into effect yet. So partly we're going to have to see what the new executives do and what they're able to implement. The thing to keep in mind is Boeing is a huge, sprawling company. And so it's going to take time. This isn't something that a new executive can come in, flip a switch, and tomorrow they're going to stop trying to buy back stocks and start reinvesting in their engineering. It's a whole culture that has to change. So what the observers are saying is we kind of need to wait and see what happens. But that the company does seem to be taking these criticisms seriously. And so hopefully is moving in the right direction now.
Boeing is one of the world's largest defense and space contractors. What are the potential ramifications if Boeing's reputation continues to take a beating? Is Boeing too big to fail?
It's hard to say for sure, right? We don't know exactly where this road ends and what the changes will bring. In terms of space and defense, it's worth noting that a lot of these criticisms that applied to commercial airplanes, experts say, also applied to Boeing's other kind of subdivisions within the company, that this non-emphasis on quality engineering is also an issue in the other parts of the company, not just with its commercial airplanes. So part of the culture change that we need to see does seem to apply to Boeing as a whole and not just to the parts of the company that make these planes that we fly on. Is Boeing too big to fail? That is a really interesting question because essentially, especially when it comes to commercial airplanes, there are really only two major commercial airplane manufacturers in the world right now, Boeing and Airbus. They're in very tight competition with each other. And frankly, Airbus just does not have the production capacity to make up for the demand if Boeing were to exit the market for some reason. So the fact of the matter is, whatever criticism comes Boeing's way, the demand for airplanes is so great that there doesn't seem to be a way out of the industry for Boeing. Airlines who are Boeing's customers are still buying Boeing airplanes, and Boeing has a years-long order book. They're delivering planes now that may have been ordered many years ago. That's how long the production of these planes take. And if Boeing were to go away, we would see problems in the airline industry. The system kind of relies on both of these companies being able to fulfill their orders, and Airbus just doesn't have the capacity to do it by itself.
Well, you mentioned the size of the company. Boeing is, of course, a major employer and contributor to the U.S. economy. What's it going to take for them to restore their reputation, Zach?
It really is going to come down to sort of re-emphasizing their engineering. It's hard as a member of the public to really see inside of a company like that. We only hear about the incidents that I report on or that get reported on in the media. And so it's not a sort of A to B answer in terms of restoring Boeing's reputation with the public, because this is the kind of thing that gets built up over years, but can get torn down very quickly with a few high-profile incidents. And so I don't think that there's exactly a clear path from where we sit to making everyone feel confident in Boeing again. But again, I think these leadership changes are sort of aimed in that direction. And it's also worth noting, I think, at this juncture, that yes, we have been reporting on some very high profile, very scary, in some cases very deadly Boeing incidents, but Boeing is one of, if not the largest commercial airplane manufacturer in the world right now. Thousands of flights every day take place on Boeing airplanes, and flying remains the safest mode of transportation. So while these incidents that we're reporting on are scary and deserve our attention and are leading to the kind of necessary change that Boeing seems to be working towards making, overall, flying and flying on Boeing specifically remains very, very safe.
And then finally, the question on many air travelers' minds is the one that you just answered, that Boeing planes are safe to fly. But I'm going to put you on the spot. If Boeing gave you, Zach, a free ticket to fly anywhere you like on the 737 MAX, would you take them up on it?
Yes, I would. And I think that I defer to the lawyer who represents the victims of those 737 MAX families. He said it best, that right now, the Boeing 737 MAX 8 is probably the safest airplane in the sky. It had 2 deadly incidents a few years ago, and that caused Boeing to really buckle down, take a renewed look at that plane, and do everything it could to make that plane safe. So if the representative of these victims' families thinks that it's a safe plane, I have no reason to not feel the same way myself.
Zach, thank you so much for being on The Excerpt.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for watching. I'm Dana Taylor. I'll see you next time.